اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك وعلمنا من لدنك من ينفعنا في الدين والدنيا الكريم. Today, inshallah ta'ala, we'll take about 10 to 11 hikam, inshallah ta'ala. And a lot of the meanings in these hikam we've mentioned before. Uh, Also, a lot of these hikam have been mentioned in other classes, but these hikam are very important. They probably summarize the majority of this book, inshallah ta'ala, 90% of the book or more. So, I want to remind us before we start that Sayyid ibn Ata illah rahimahullah ta'ala, the beginning of the hikam to the end all revolve around the concept of لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله, that there is no ability to do anything to change your state, to change anything from a certain state to another, nor to have any power without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the only one who has the ability to do things. So surrendering to Allah ta'ala, giving up, relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way to approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. As Sayyidina Rasulullah says, he says to يا أبا موسى ألا أدلك على كنز من كنوز الجنة. He says to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, يا عبد الله بن قيس, his name was Abdullah ibn Qais رضي الله عنه, should I not show you one of the treasures that are hidden, and they're from the treasures of Jannah? And then he says لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. So the first hikmah that we're going to talk about today: جل حكم الأزل أن ينضاف إلى العلل. جل حكم الأزل أن ينضاف إلى العلل.
A pre-eternal command is high above needing an external cause.
نعم. So الأزل is used for things that have no beginning, pre-eternal. Okay, and علل are reasons or causes that happened later on. Okay, now reasons and external causes for things. Okay, so يعني Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything, and he didn't have any need to create these things. He subhanahu wa ta'ala also created the reasons for these things, okay, and then he created the outcome of that reason. So for example, if someone needs to go to the kitchen to eat, for example, Allah ta'ala created the food, and he created eating, and he created the need to go to eat and the hunger, and he created subhanallah the outcome also. So any cause or reason that happens in this dunya, it's always a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he declared things before things happened, he declared things and he declared the reasons of these causes subhanahu wa ta'ala. This means that we can't relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way we relate to ourselves. We can't understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls things, and we can't understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the universe run. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the scholars say, yes, he does have a hikmah. He has wisdom behind things, meaning that everything he creates has a good outcome, has a good outcome. But it doesn't mean that outcome is what drove Allah ta'ala to do that thing. He is not pressured, nor is he affected by other things. Okay? Nor is he affected by other things, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. That's why the Nun al-Masri, he says, التوحيد, definition of tawheed, not in aqidah, in tasawwuf, is the tawheed, is أن يعلم أن قدرة الله تعالى في الأشياء في الأشياء بلا علاج، وصنعه لها بلا مزاج، وعلة كل شيء صنعه، ولا علة لصنعه، وليس في السماوات والأرض ولا في الأراضين السفلى مدبر غير الله، وكل ما خطر ببالك فالله بخلاف ذلك أو مخالف لذلك. Summarize the whole aqidah from the prospect of Tawheed and science of Aqeedah, and also of the soul together in one. He says Tawheed is to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his ability to do things, and when he decreed things, he did it subhanahu wa ta'ala independently without anything else affecting his decision or affecting his creation of that thing, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And he created it not for any opinion or mood or reason that came up to him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wasn't affected by anything. Being affected by something means that your choice is weak. Means that another thing can come and change your opinion. Okay? وَعِلَّةُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سُنَّةٌ. And uh, everything that happens has a reason behind it. Okay? That made it happen, and Allah Ta'ala has no reason for what He made happen, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nothing in the heavens nor the earth can happen, nor has it been planned by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the reality. And everything that comes to your mind about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala is different to that. He's not the same as that, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not the same as that. Now, here it's important. There's one more thing that we can mention here, inshallah ta'ala. And this hikmah, it's really actually like an introduction to the next few hikam. But there's one more thing that we can mention here that would be beneficial. And that's the saying of some scholars. Imam Ghazali said this. It's famous. This is the saying of Imam Ghazali. And some scholars who weren't, let's say, yani, the deepest into tasawwuf maybe, they made takfir on Imam Ghazali because of this word. He says, ليس في الإمكان أبدع مما كان. ليس في الإمكان أبدع مما كان. There's no existing possibility out there that is better than what has already been declared. Okay? And Imam Ghazali is, by this, what does he mean? He means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He already declared what's going to happen. So there was no other possibilities that could happen in this world other than what Allah Ta'ala had already declared. Once He declared things, that's how it's going to happen. Okay? And He did not mean what other people understood by Him. He didn't mean Allah Ta'ala couldn't have done other things. He couldn't have chosen other choices. Allah Ta'ala could have chosen whatever He wants, but once He declared things and chosen, they don't change, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? He then says, عنايته فيك لا لشيء منك وأين كنت حين واجهتك عنايته وقابلتك رعايته لم يكن في أزله إخلاص أعمال ولا وجود أحوال بل لم يكن هناك إلا محض الإفضال وعظيم النوال عنايته فيك لا لشيء منك وأين كنت حين واجهتك عنايته وقابلتك رعايته لم يكن في أزله إخلاص أعمال ولا وجود أحوال بل لم يكن هناك إلا محض الإفضال وعظيم النوال.
His special concern for you is not due to anything you have done. Where were you when His special concern and care took charge of you? There was no sincerity in actions in His pre-eternity, nor the presence of spiritual states. At that time, there was only mere benevolence and great gifts.
Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He declared that you would be a person who is guided by Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He declared before time that you would be a person who would believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would believe in Islam, would reach levels of belief that you wouldn't have even expected. Were you there? Were you able to see that? Were you able to change things? Was it your actions that made Him declare that subhanahu wa ta'ala? Did you have sincerity that made Allah Ta'ala choose that for you? Or did you have ahwal, spiritual states that you're going through? No. Yes, Allah Ta'ala makes the outcome only happen dependent on these specific states and intentions and actions. But when He declared it, they weren't there. These are all things that He already had pre-planned, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in reality, the only reason for you to reach what you've reached is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only reason to reach that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Sayyidina Ata wants us to focus on the angle we should view the blessings of Allah Ta'ala from. So there's one angle that we should look from, which is the angle we should view our actions from. We should hold ourselves accountable for every mistake we make. We should force ourselves to do good actions, and we should know that only good outcomes happen when you do good actions. That's how we should focus on our own actions. But when it comes into seeing the blessings of Allah Ta'ala, you have to see it through understanding who Allah Ta'ala is. Allah Ta'ala is eternal. He subhanahu wa ta'ala has no beginning. So the same thing means that his blessings have no beginning. So don't see his blessings through the lens that you see your own actions. Your actions are created, so you see them as something that are new and created, and you see, the effects of your actions from that angle, from that lens. But Allah Ta'ala, you don't see him from the same angles, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why some of the lines of poetry that would say, some of the Sufis would say, وكنت قديما أطلب الوصل منهم فلما آتاني العلم وارتفع الجهل علمت بأن العبد لا طلب له فإن قربوا فإن قربوا فضل وإن بعدوا عدل وإن أظهروا لم يظهروا غير وصفهم وإن ستروا فالستر من أجلهم يحلو. He says, I used to always try to seek a connection, to be connected to them, until I reached a state where I was gifted knowledge and my ignorance was lifted away from me. And I understood that a slave isn't someone who seeks things, but a slave is someone who receives. If they choose to bring you close to them, it's their choice. If they choose to throw you away, it's their choice. And a more deeper way than saying this, and a more lines of poetry that have even deeper meaning, are the famous lines of poetry. قد كنت أحسب أن وصلك يشترى بنفائس الأموال والأرياح وظننت جهلا أن حبك حين تفنى عليه كرائم الأرواح حتى رأيتك تجتبي وتخص من تختاره بلطائف الإمناح فعلمت أنك لا تنال بحيلة فلوت رأسي تحت طي جناحي وجعلت في عش الغرام قامتي فيه غدوي دائما ورواحي. I used to think that the concept of being connected to you is so simple, and that I could buy it with the most expensive types of money and wealth, and basically it was something that I could achieve through my, investment. And I also thought, out of ignorance, that your love is simple. Okay, that your love is simple, and basically all it needs is to give my soul to you, and that's it. I receive your love. Until I saw the reality that you choose and you specify whoever you want. It comes from you, not from me. And I knew that you're priceless. That you can't be bought, and we can't get you through any type of clever, planning. You're not someone who we can get, who we can win, no matter how much we plan. So I put my head down, very low, and I basically left home, and I made it that I live in a state of love. All I do is I love you, and I just wait to receive from you, subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know if any of the munshideen are here. If we could hear these abiyat, it would be nice. If not, inshallah, we'll continue. If it's
Bismillah.
Bismillah.
قد كنت أحسب أن وصلك يشترى بنفائس الأموال والأرياح وظننت جهلا أن حبك هين تفني عليه كرائم الأرواح، حتى رأيتك تجتبي وتخص من تختاره بلطائف الإمناح، فعلمت أنك لا تنال بحيلة، فلويت رأسي تحت طي جناحي، فعلمت أنك لا تنال بحيلة، فلويت رأسي تحت طي جناحي، وجعلت في عش الغرام إقامتي، فيه غدوي دائما ورواحي.
سيدنا عطاء الله says علم أن العباد يتشرفون إلى ظهور سر العناية، فقال سبحانه وتعالى يختص برحمته من يشاء، وعلم أنه لو خلاهم وذلك لتركوا العمل اعتمادا على الأزل، فقال إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين.
He knew that his slaves would want to know him, know whom his special concern is for. So he said, He chooses for his mercy whom he wills. But he knew if he left them at that, they would leave performing actions depending only on the pre-eternal command. So he said, Indeed, the mercy of God is closer to those who act excellently.
So subhanallah, like we just said, there's different angles that you can see things from. And in tasawwuf, really, what you need to do, and the advice, is that you see things from the angle that is the most, let's say, the most practical and that suits your state that you're in. So if you're in a state where your nafs, of course, someone has reached a state where they pass all the levels of the nafs, and mashallah, they only see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then alhamdulillah, they don't need to focus, and they don't get bothered by these things. But if your nafs is bringing you away and reminding you, telling you that just don't work, don't do anything, Allah has declared who's going to pass and who's not, and you have a lot of influence like this, so you're using the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the wrong way, then you need to see things from the angle that Allah Ta'ala has made certain outcomes dependent on certain actions. The mercy of Allah Ta'ala is close to those who are excellent. And in other cases, you might be the need to see the secret, okay? To see the key, to see the sir of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and how He runs things. And you can't see the reality of that, but you can understand some of the outcomes of that. And you can read ayahs like يَخْتَصُّ بِرَحْمَتِهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. He chooses for His mercy, He'll choose you to bring you closer, but then He'll make you do actions that bring you closer to Him Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So like we just said, seeing things through different lenses. um, in other hikam before this, we've spoken about istifa and takhsis, and we said how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can bring towards Him whoever He wants. You might not do certain actions, but He will be the one who takes you and raises you levels and levels without you doing anything. Now, another way to make sense of this is that Allah Ta'ala, you can say, He's given a shared amount of guidance that is available to all of His slaves, Muslim and Kafir. Okay. And then He bestows gifts upon those who He chooses for these ranks. And it can't be deserved by any action, special gifts. Okay. That's another way that you could see these ayat and these ahadith to speak about the guidance of Allah Ta'ala. And He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, إلى مشيئته يستند كل شيء ولا تستند هي إلى شيء.
On his volition depends everything, and his volition depends on nothing.
No. So this hikmah is talking about some of the adab of Tawheed, the manners of Tawheed. So the Sufis say that Tawheed has manners. There are certain manners that you should have when it comes into your Tawheed, your relationship, your belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And one of those adab, those manners, is to believe that everything is dependent on the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the will of Allah ta'ala depends on nothing. If you do this, they say, then you have now attached yourself to what is known as ḥikam al-azal, to the rules and the law of what was pre-eternal. وطرحت الأسباب والعلل, and you have left the asbab, you have now detached yourself from being attached to reasons and means that are other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the simplest way to go into the state of ubudiyyah, of being a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being needy to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and leaving your own ikhtiyar, your own choice. Now, Sayyidina ʿAṭā now is going to take us to another reality and speak about some of the states of those who have done this, who have reached Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, close to Allah ta'ala, some of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can see the differences of actions that the awliya do according to their states and ahwal. So in some situations you see the awliya, they'll be very focused on dua, sometimes they won't, sometimes they'll do this, sometimes they'll do that. How the awliya would act depending on the hikam that we just read now. The hikam regarding what? Regarding the mashia, the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the qadr, the predestination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, ربما دلهم الأدب على ترك الطلب اعتمادا على قسمته وانشغالا بذكره عن مسألته.
Sometimes manners dictate for them to leave supplication relying on his predecided division, and due to them being busy with his remembrance.
It's a very interesting hikmah. So sometimes the awliya of Allah Ta'ala, the close people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not always, in some situations, they find it the most practical and appropriate and respectful thing to do. What is it? To not ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala certain things. Sometimes you want to make a dua, but you don't want to make dua to show Allah Ta'ala your dedication. You just want a certain outcome and you're rushed. You're focused on quickly getting what you want, and you don't even care about breaking down in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this situation, you might need to teach yourself adab, okay, to wait, have patience, or to only ask out of humbleness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a simple explanation for us, for normal people. But of course, inshallah ta'ala, the awliya, it's not only that, but sometimes, yes, they don't have an urge to rush to things, but what happens is that they find that they've done everything possible in their hands, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to teach them a lesson, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has held that thing for them for a reason. So now all they have to do is surrender and to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and just let things happen. For example, someone might be going through a calamity in their life. Okay? Their family might fall apart, their house might break down, really, really destructive things might happen. And subhanAllah, they might be given an indication that this is all a test from Allah. He wants to see how long you're going to wait and be patient. SubhanAllah. Oh, there are different states and situations they'll be in, but this is just a small summary. Imam Zarruq, he summarizes this very well. Okay. Sayyid Zarruq, he says, um, the adab, having manners, might be the reason they wouldn't ask certain things, and it also might be the reason that they ask certain things from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so depending on this on the situation of the person. So there's three situations he said. There's this state of talab, three states. States of talab is state of requesting things. Okay, and that is done when you're in a situation where you are witnessing and noticing the reasons for things and noticing the outcomes of certain things. Okay. The second level or state would be that you don't ask for something specific, but you allude to that thing. Okay, you allude to things. You ask things around you. You give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can show he's your need. I need anything. You give. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. What do you say? Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. He says, I need whatever you give me. Allah ta'ala gave him something specific. He gave him a wife. He gave him shelter. He gave him all those things. But Sayyidina Musa didn't ask for that specific. And the ta'reed, alerting to things, says is when you can't see the means in front of you. So you can't see any means in front of you that are clear. So why rush to means? Khalas, the means are not there. Okay. And what you can see in front of you is you can see the reality of what Allah Ta'ala has declared. Okay? You're witnessing something that would lead you to a state of being a slave, abd of Allah Ta'ala. So use your dua just to show that you are in need of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Okay? And the last stage is the state of sukoot, of not asking anything, of being quiet. And that is when the situation of seeing the reality overwhelms you to the extent that you disappear from other things. All of these things have happened to the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different situations. Read the Quran, you find them all. Okay. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَجَعَلْ لِي لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. Give me a tongue that tells the truth. Okay? Make me truthful and sincere. And he asked Allah Ta'ala things from the dunya even. Give my family this and give them this and protect my offsprings. And in another situation, he didn't ask clearly, but he he gave a certain indication to what he says, he is the one who guides me. He's the one who created me and guides me. He's the one, if I'm sick, he subhanahu wa ta'ala cures me. He didn't ask for something, but he's showing his his need. Then he says, and he's the one that I hope when I pass away, he will forgive me, subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the day of judgment. But then when he was thrown into the fire, he didn't ask for anything. He says, Hasbi Allah. In some narrations, he says, Hasbi min su'ali ilmuhu bihali. I don't need to ask him because he knows my situation. And him knowing my situation is stronger than me asking him. Now, Imam Qushayri, and we know Imam Qushayri, he put down the main manuscript for Sufis throughout history. Okay? Risala al-Qushayri. He says, إذا وجد في قلبي إشارة إلى الدعاء دع. If you find in your heart an indication to make dua, okay, then they would make dua. Okay? And also, if they found an urge in their heart, they found that the urge to make dua, and they felt that you feel like making dua, then they would make even more dua. And if they find that their heart is in a situation of qalb, of closure, then it's better to just keep quiet. And that's why some of them would say, ما سألت الله تعالى بلسان شيئا منذ 50 سنة. I have never asked Allah Ta'ala anything for 50 years. ولا أريد أن أدعو ولا أن يدعى لي. And I'm not asking, I don't want to make dua, and I don't want anyone to make dua for me. I'm focusing on Allah Ta'ala giving me. This is a certain situation for a certain person. Okay? And subhanAllah, like you said, it depends and changes from person to person. Mhm. Uh, Once a murid was near his shaykh, next to his shaykh, and he wanted to leave. So the shaykh said, where are you going? He said, I don't want to keep you busy for too long. So he said to him, Allah Ta'ala isn't affected by time. Isn't affected by time. And we want the Lord of time, we don't want time. And whoever reaches the situation of witnessing immediately leaves the situation of witnessing other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Allah Ta'ala says, وَتَحْسُبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا وَهُمْ You think they're sleeping, they're awake and they're sleeping. So I'm not even affected by time, by anything. I'm that attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another similar example is that Abu Yazid al-Bustami asked, where is Abu Yazid? So Abu Yazid said, there's no Abu Yazid that exists. And a man said to Shibli, where is the Shibli? He said he died a long time ago. He died a long time ago. And then he says, may Allah Ta'ala not forgive, not have mercy on him. What does he mean? He means, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not bring him back to his life that was a false life and keep him in the situation of witnessing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how the Sufis used to see certain things. This is a very high state, like I said, that some people might reach. And in that situation, they might not even ask certain things in certain situations. But generally, what we see is that the awliya themselves, the anbiya, the prophets of Allah ta'ala, sometimes they'll be in a situation where they ask for dua, sometimes they're not. Okay, it depends, it changes. He then says, إنما يذكر من يجوز عليه الإغفال وإنما ينبه من يمكن منه الإهمال.
Only he who can forget is reminded, and only he who can neglect is told to be attentive.
Right. So, if you want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're interested in asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember some of the adab of asking Allah ta'ala, if it's in your situation when you're supposed to make dua, is that you're not reminding Allah ta'ala, okay? You're not catching his attention subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are showing him your need subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, summarizing everything, this is what he means by this hikmah. He then says, ورود الفاقات أعياد المريدين. This hikmah is now he's talking about difficult situations that happen to people who are surrendering to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They might go through difficulties. No.
Times of need are the celebration days of the disciple.
No. Subhanallah, some of the awliya, if they go through a big calamity, they would get excited. They would feel happy. And subhanallah, for them, happy moments are just they're the most simple types of happiness. But going through a situation where it brings you close to Allah Ta'ala, where you're able to disconnect from things that bring away from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, where you're able to focus on Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, that's the best time of celebration. That's why they would say, قالوا غدا العيد ماذا أنت لابسه فقلت خلعة تساق حبه جرعان فقر وصبر هما ثوباي تحتهما قلب يرى إلفه الأعياد والجمعة أحرى الملابس أن تلقى الحبيب به يوم التزاور في الثوب الذي خلع الدهر لي مأثم إن غبت يا أملي والعيد ما كنت مرأى لي ومستمعا. They said, tomorrow it's Eid. What are you going to wear on Eid? So I said, okay. I said, I'm going to wear something, a cloth that was brought to me through love and difficulty. The cloth of poorness and the cloth of sabr, of having patience. These are the two clothes, and underneath these clothes, you will find a heart, okay, that only sees being close to the beloved, Eid, and also Jum'ah. And Jum'ah as well. He then says, ربما وجدت من المزيد في الفاقات ما لا تجده في الصوم والصلاة.
Perhaps you gain benefits in times of need, which you do not gain in fasting and prayer.
So why is this? And they say the difficulties, they feed the soul. Fasting and prayer feeds the heart. Okay? And the soul is where you can understand. You only receive understanding not through your heart, through your soul. Okay? Your heart leads you to your soul. But your soul itself, subhanAllah, is a lot more difficult to break through to. Okay? If you break through to your heart, everything is clear. That's what they say, subhanAllah. There's so many to your soul, sorry. If you break through to your soul, everything is clear. That's why there's so many barriers between us and our souls. The more connected we're with our soul, with our ruh, subhanAllah, the faster things are shown to us and we understand and we are more connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The soul is beautiful, but it's hidden under so many things. Difficult situations are things that really, subhanAllah, feed your soul. Feed your soul. Now. سيدي ابن عجيبة he says اعلم أن المدد الذي هو الفتح الرباني إنما يقع في القلوب الفارغة من العوائق والشواغل وقد يوجد العبد كثير الصلاة والصيام وباب قلبه مسدود لانشغاله بأمور دنياه وهو الأكثر من الناس وقد يوجد العبد قليل الصوم والصلاة وقلبه مفتوح للعلوم اللدنية والتنزلات الفهمية وهم الأقلون من الناس وكل العبادات يدخلها الرياء إلا الخمول لكونه لا حظ للنفس فيه قال بعضهم يقول الله تعالى لعبده سبكتك بالفاقة لتكون ذهبا. He says that madad, receiving from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the real opening of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it only is only poured down upon hearts that are empty from other things bothering it and being busy with other things. A slave of Allah ta'ala might do a lot of prayer, might pray and fast a lot, but their heart is closed, the door to his heart is closed, there's so much other things going on in their heart. Why? Because there's so much dunya and other things going on. And someone might not have as much prayer and fasting, but their heart is totally open to receiving anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah ta'ala give them understanding, He'll give them openings, give them so many things. And like Sayyidina Ajiyah says, all the other types of ibadah that you can do to open and make things better for yourself, subhanAllah, it's very easy to fall into showing off to riyā, except when you're in a state of closure, when you lose things, when you're just left alone, when you're in a state of khalwa. Khumul basically saying is like you just sitting back because there's no way to see that as a good action. There's no way that the nafs could feel proud of that, basically. And then he says, الفاقة بسط المواهب.
Having hard-pressed needs is the domain for divine gift.
Just like Sayyidina Ajib said, Allah Ta'ala, He uses these situations to give you the best of gifts. And then He says, إن أردت ورود المواهب عليك صحح الفقر والفاقة إليك لديك إنما الصدقات للفقراء.
If you want divine gifts, rectify your feeling of need. Charity is only for the poor.
No. So, as we've mentioned many times, showing your need to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, showing your faqr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really the only thing you need to really reach deep levels of connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And when you do that, like Sayyidina Āṭā says, he might test you to make you even a more lower state. Only then He'll open doors of get blessings for you once you surrender towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ. Charity is only for the poor. Okay? You have to be poor towards Allah ta'ala to receive the charity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to be poor in this world to receive the charity of people. In front of Allah ta'ala, you have to be poor to Him to receive the charity of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this concept is in everything. It's not, see, this is when you read the Quran and you understand just what is mentioned by the ayah, that's one thing. But if you understand that the Quran also gives you signals to other things, that's a deep understanding of the Quran. That's known as tafsir al-ishari. Okay? Tafsir through indication. Okay? The Sufis are very big on this. So if you wanna, if you wanna receive lots of knowledge, you have to be, subhanAllah, you have to show your need to your teacher in knowledge. If you want to receive lots of things from Allah Ta'ala, you have to show to Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how things work, subhanAllah. Okay? And then he summarizes all of this, he says, تحقق بأوصافك يمدك بأوصافه، تحقق بذلك يمدك بعزه، تحقق بعجزك يمدك بقدرته، تحقق بضعفك يمدك بحوله وقوته.
Become realized in your attributes, and He will strengthen you with His. Realize your humility, and He will strengthen you with His pride. Realize your incapacity, He will strengthen you with His ability. Realize your weakness, and He will strengthen you with His power.
I think we've explained this before many times. Subhanallah. And that there's four basically attributes of the slave: poorness, humility, weakness, and loss of hope. And opposite to these are the signs of Allah, the attributes of Allah Ta'ala. He gives you them when you show you His attributes. He gives you basically madad from His attributes that allow you to actually, subhanAllah, be more rich and more better and more strong in this world. We've mentioned that many times. He then says, ربما رزق الكرامة من لم تكمل الاستقامة. We'll explain that next class, inshallah. صلى الله عليه وسلم محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Is there any questions, inshallah? Any questions from last week's class or this class?
جزاكم الله خيرا مولانا سيدي.
Yeah. inshallah we'll meet next week بإذن الله تعالى على خير. السلام عليكم.